the biggest station in the world, playing all of today's hits. You're listening to Instinct Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to this episode of the Dr. Marquita Blades Show, Candid Conversations that Create Change. I'm Dr. Blades. Thank you for joining me. Today, we have an explosive show planned for you, an outstanding Candid Conversation. I am joined by Instinct Radio talk show host Laris Hodges, who's going to help me moderate this conversation. So, Laris, would you like to reintroduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Laris Hodges. I am host of A Beer and a Conversation here at Instinct Radio, Tuesday night, 6 to 8. And we talk basically about these, I would say, comprehensive barbershop talk, but mainly social issues that need to be addressed within our community.
All right, and I have one panelist who is joining us on the phone. I'm going to have him introduce himself. His name is Mr. Robert Jackson. He is an education consultant and speaker. Robert, do you want to say hi to our viewers and listeners?
Hello, everyone. Sure. Thanks for having me on, Dr. Blades. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Jackson, and my job is to go around the country and reverse this school-to-prison pipeline. So I'm trying to work with educators, parents, and students and bridge this gap. So nice to meet everyone.
Thank you for joining us. And now I'll have my in-studio guests introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Dr. Woodley.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lateshia Woodley. I'm the proud principal of Frank McLaren Success Academy in Fulton County. I've had the distinct pleasure over the last 10 years to work in some of the lowest performing schools in the state of Georgia, helping to transform low performing schools into high performing schools and really make a difference in the lives of students who people feel like are not going to be successful, and remove barriers to ensure that they graduate from high school.
All right, Dr. Jackson.
Yes, I'm Dr. Marcus Jackson. I'm actually a former principal. Currently, right now, I'm actually consulting, where I'm actually mentoring principals. I'm also an author of 2 books, because my teacher said I can, and School and Life, Living in the Middle. And I'm excited to be here today to actually share my knowledge as it relates to this particular topic. Very important topic that actually needs to be discussed, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you all for joining me. We're going to jump right in. Today, we are discussing the school-to-prison pipeline, and this has been a much debated and talked about topic over the past couple of years in particular. So I thought that I should bring together some of the heaviest hitting change agents that I know so that they can share with you their insights. And I'll start by asking Dr. Woodley, do you mind explaining to our viewers who are not familiar, what exactly is the school to prison pipeline?
What's the school to prison pipeline really consists of the fact that we know that when students are not successful in graduating from high school, the results of that usually ends up with them being incarcerated or really and truly plagued to a life of poverty, of generational poverty. And so basically what's going on is students are basically being pushed out of the educational systems based on, I believe, trauma. The trauma they've experienced, is their life situations and things of that nature make school not to be a place that's conducive to their needs. And therefore, they're asked to be placed in a box and to really perform in a system that's not built to support the needs that they have, and thus they end up not graduating from high school, and then end up really in that cycle of generational poverty as well as incarceration.
Anyone want to add to that definition?
I don't know. I mean, I think she said it so eloquently, but I mean, it's absolutely true. And I think one thing that we got to note is that this is not some sort of accident. This is actually more systemic, and so that's why if we don't remedy the educational deficiencies, then it won't be done. There won't be any educational reform coming from the top, because the system is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do.
And I'll actually have to agree with you, but before I actually go any further, I actually wanted to preface this dialogue with stating that there's no school, no matter what school it is, no matter what academy it is, no matter what they have at that particular school, is better than a nurturing home. Secondly, there's no principal. There's no teacher that is more inspiring and encouraging than supportive parents. I had to get that out first. Although we're talking about the school to prison pipeline, and just as you stated, it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. And it's directly related around literature and the ability to read. And I'm going to go into some in-depth discussions about that in the future, because I did some crazy things that I was criticized for as a principal. And I was teaching my kids to read. I broke the rules. I broke all the rules, and I taught my kids how to read. And I'm going to explain a lot of that. But yes, we're definitely, you're definitely correct about the systemic issue. But everything has actually been placed on the school. But it takes the entire community. It takes the entire community, and Dr. Woodley and I were speaking about that, and I'm excited about getting this discussion and dialogue going. I have so much to say.
So, Mr. Jackson, when you introduced yourself, you stated that it is your job to go around the country and to help schools, I guess, prevent students from falling into the school to prison pipeline. So can you tell us a little bit more about how your work helps to remedy this problem?
Well, I think the work I do, and I think we had mentioned Principal Kafele earlier, and now Dr. Jackson has joined us in this fight to help educators recognize that when we suspending kids over trivial things, and when our kids are not being challenged to read and not being challenged to do all the right things, they can end up on the wrong side of this. And I was just at the school. It's funny that we're having this conversation. I was at school Friday. My great nephew got in trouble at school. Somebody jumped on him at school, and he was trying to defend himself or whatever. But they suspended both kids. That's what they do now. They don't really talk about too much. They call the police. Like when we got in the fights when we were kids, I mean, they break it up, put you in that school suspension, or talk to you and send you back to class. Now they call the police and they sending people to jail, right? So what they're doing is they're building this system that's allowing our kids to go to jail at a young age, and they're going to juvenile, and their records are being built from a young age. So I went to the school on Friday and met with these principals, and they have this room called the holding room. And if I stretch my hands out to the right and I stretch my hands out to the left, I can touch the walls. The holding room is smaller than a jail cell. I said, what is this room for? Well, when kids get in trouble, they put them in that room. I said, what about a kid who has anxiety or a kid who is claustrophobic? How do you handle that kid? You know what I mean? So it starts at a young age. And what I mean by the work that I do when I'm going out working with educators, working with parents, working with students. So we're kicking a kid out for disrespect. What is your definition of disrespect? I think that these rules are being made up as we go along, and what's happening is there's a disproportion of young men of color that are suffering from this so-called system in the schools where, these educators are allowed to kick kids out for trivial reasons, and the kid get kicked out of school long enough, his grade's going to drop, he's going to be behind, and he's going to end up in the penal system. That's what some of the goals are. And we're trying to prevent that.
So I have a question, because both of you have mentioned literacy, and a lot of the schools and programs that I work with have a focus on literacy. So I know that schools are asking and seeking services to help increase literacy, but what it sounds like I'm hearing in this discussion is that maybe it's not really the goal. So can y'all help me understand?
Doc, would you like to go first? Okay. First of all, there are very few teachers, and many people don't know this. Teaching reading is an art form. If you've ever been around a great reading teacher, it's an art form. Unfortunately, many teachers, elementary teachers, graduate from undergrad only taking one course, Foundations of Reading, and that's it. So you're straight out of college. You have 28 kids who come into you excited with if you're teaching kindergarten, with a 30 million word gap. And they're expecting you to fill that particular gap. One of the things that I did, I've been a principal at all levels. At both of us have actually been to the same high school, principals of the same high school, and I actually went back to take a turnaround in elementary school. The first thing I did was ensure that my teachers had their reading endorsement. Now, I didn't have mine, so I had to go to school too. So myself and 32 teachers from October all the way until May spent every Thursday from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock learning how to teach our kids how to read. They didn't know. They didn't know how. So we learned how to do that, and within 2 years, we turned around one of the third lowest performing school in the state of Georgia, and we had the highest gains this past spring across we're in the top 5 in the district in regards to gains. And it was all centered around our teachers learning how to teach our kids how to read. So that's first. Secondly, yes, there's a variety of different programs. Many of these programs, literacy programs, Read 180, and things of that nature, all of these are expensive. And if we catch it on the front end, pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade, then our students will have an opportunity. But many principals have been brainwashed in our current system is where our grades only come in at on grades 3, 4, and 5. That's where you get your, those are the testing grades. But if you're only focusing on grades 3, 4, and 5, you're always going to have a problem in grades 3, 4, and 5. You have to catch it at the beginning. And many of our kids' literacy foundation is actually built on sand. And in some cases, in high poverty areas, it's quicksand.
I definitely agree. As I was sitting here listening to you speak, that has been one of the foundations of my work in turnaround work in schools is literacy. And I mandate that every teacher that's in my building is reading endorsed. So that's one of the, because I am at the high school level, and every child that comes to me comes to my school behind academically. They are 1 to 2 grade levels behind academically in credits, as well as usually reading on a 6th grade or below grade level as they walk through the doors of a high school. So, so we know that literacy is key. Now, there is debates about whether or not prisons are built around 3rd grade reading scores in an area. That some people say that is correct information, that's what they use. Some people say that it's incorrect information. But we know that that plays a major role on whether or not a child is successful or not successful. One of the things I did want to kind of talk about when we talk about build the schools and the fact that the schools are basically designed not to fit the needs of every child. What I've seen is that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to education in our system, and that one-size-fits-all approach works for some but not for all. And so the problem that we have is we want all the students to fit into this box, and when they don't fit into this box, we don't know what to do with them. And so that has been my work over the last 10 years of really trying to recreate situations where we're not creating an institutionalized system, but looking at what does students need to be successful. By being a non-traditional school, I have a unique pleasure and opportunity to look at what's working in traditional ed for some students and what is not working, and how can I build a program or a support system for students to ensure that they're able to be successful and graduate versus not being successful. The school that I'm currently at, when I got there 5 years ago, the year before I got there, they had a 19% graduation rate. So over 80% of the students were not graduating from high school. So we were definitely one of those institutions, as back in the day, they talked about a dropout factory. We would definitely would have been considered a dropout factory. But one of the things that I had to do is I had to really and truly going into the building, look at what it is that we were doing and build a school that met the needs of students and not a school that met the needs of adults. And look at our practices and try to redesign our approach so that we're able to wrap around students and provide that circle of support. And so this year we hit 75% graduation rate. So I know that when we really put the students in the center, we can really make an impact on the school to prison pipeline.
I just want to take a moment to say the last teaching position that I held was at McLaren under Dr. Woodley's leadership. And when Dr. Jackson mentioned having all of his teachers become reading endorsed, I remember one day Dr. Woodley sitting down with me as we were doing maybe one of my summative evaluations, and she informed me that her entire staff had been reading endorsed, and her expectation was that I needed to do that as well because you work here now, and that's just what we do. And so I definitely want to commend her and just say to everyone, I know firsthand the level of commitment that she has to creating situations for students to be successful because I witnessed them. Now, to go back to this literacy point, we're saying that it's not just there's a gap with students knowing how to read, but then there's also a gap with teachers having the background to provide that type of service. And so if that's something that we know, is that leg of the school to prison pipeline something that could easily be fixed by addressing teacher education programs?
And I think there are actually several districts here in the metropolitan area, and as you indicated earlier, that's their top priority. Because you can't read, you can't comprehend. You can't comprehend, there's no critical thinking. So it is important to get the literacy piece down, but as you indicated, there's so many gaps as it relates to the teachers. And the knowledge of the teachers in this technology-driven age is actually being replaced with technology. And as I actually stated earlier in regards to no principal being able to replace a parent, there's no computer program that can replace a knowledgeable and effective teacher. And we have to remember that, and that may require you to go back to school. And if I'm the principal and she's the principal, and she's going to have you to go back to school, which is a very rigorous course. Very rigorous course. You're talking about hours. They gave up their scandal time,
Right.
Grey's Anatomy, to hang out with me from 4 to 9. And we had a daycare set up and everything. We had a group of teachers who was responsible for feeding. We were committed to our students reading. We were committed, and I didn't care what nobody said. When I went from the elementary school and became a middle school principal, and I saw some of the same kids that left my elementary school that were now in my middle school and were so far behind, I was like, wow. So even at the middle school, we designed something which was called Dear Day, where we focused on one day, we focused on the 5 components of reading. We had some of the highest test scores in the district and in the state that year in Clayton County. I went to high school, same thing, literature. So when I went back to elementary school, I took an entire day and focused on those 5 components of reading. I had results. They didn't approve that plan at first, although I had results at the middle school level. And they came back and they like, what did you do? And I was like, you remember that plan that y'all told me don't do? I said, I did it anyway. And I had my teachers behind me, and I knew it was results. I would get the results, and I did. And we took an entire day. Remember, my entire staff at that particular time was the only staff in the country where 100%, I'm talking about art teacher, music teacher, everybody had their reading endorsement. So we took an entire day where we had about 2 or 3 teachers in every single classroom, focusing on vocabulary, comprehension. We had phonemic awareness, and we were rotating. And we met the needs of each and every student. And we focused on those kids during that particular time because no matter what environment you're in, you have those students that are here. And those are the students who are usually forgotten in this process.
Yeah, we discussed that last time on my show, that we do overlook the high achievers sometimes. Mr. Jackson, you wanted to say something?
Well, I believe that all teachers need some kind of cultural diversity training, and just because 2 people look like each other don't mean they know anything about each other. And I just believe that teachers need training. I believe administrators need training, because if you look at the statistics on, race relations, statistics about race, behavior, suspension, none of them have proven that black students misbehave at a higher rate, but black students are being suspended at a higher rate. There's a reason for that. And I believe there's a misconception. I believe there's a misunderstanding of a lot of our kids, and that's why they're being suspended at a higher rate. And as a result of that, we have kids who are not graduating on time. We have kids who are not reading at level. We have kids who are being suspended, and that's leading to this school-to-prison pipeline. And I believe that all educators need some kind of training on cultural diversity.
One of the things that you brought up when you talked about training for your teachers, one of the things that I'm faced with on a daily basis, working in the schools that I have served, is the number of students that are come to school that have experienced severe trauma.
Yes.
And
Yes.
one of the things that we, as a staff, that I had my staff to do was to become mental health first aid certified, being able to identify when a child needs additional support services and dealing with trauma. One of the research, some research on the ACE scores, on the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, looking at that information and understanding that most of our students have 4 or more ACEs that come to us. How do we provide those services up front? So we begin to do psychosocial intakes, meeting with every child as they walk through the door to identify what support systems that were needed, because what happens a lot of time, behavior is it's not the root cause of the situation. Mm-hmm. So the students acting out in anger, the students acting out, doing different things, students that may be considered being disrespectful, but that's how they talk at home, mm-hmm. you know? Mm-hmm. So having an understanding of all these different factors of working with a diverse population and students of poverty has been beneficial to us, but it takes, and what I found is even individuals that came from impoverished backgrounds, once you've been away from that impoverished background for a period of time, you begin to take on the mindset of the majority. Mm-hmm. And so you don't always be able to relate to what the students are going through. So that professional development is so very important, dealing with, having an understanding of dealing with students with poverty.
And you bring up poverty. That was going to be my next question, back to Mr. Jackson on the phone. When we talk about the disproportionate suspensions for children of color, I often wonder, is it particularly for children of color, or is it for children of an impoverished background, but it just appears to be that it's more for children of color because it seems like more people of color are from an impoverished background? So is it really color, or is it more economics?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we know some kids are socially, economically disadvantaged, and I like to do an exercise with educators, because I believe a lot of educators who haven't been trained on this. I mean, when you think about I started teaching back in the mid-'90s, and a lot of educators have not been trained on working with kids in poverty, working with kids who are socially, economically disadvantaged. And to be quite honest, a lot of educators don't even know what socially, economically disadvantaged is.
Yes.
And I have to explain that to them, what it means. I asked them questions. Did you grow up with 2 parents? Did you have access to a tutor growing up? Did you have these certain things? Those things are what I'm talking about, to be socially, economically disadvantaged. And I do some exercises with educators because they need to understand what that means. And I said, just because the kid is coming from poverty don't mean the kid is at risk. I don't even like using the word at risk. I don't believe in using the word at risk. I believe we got kids who are troubled and who are going through some troubled situations. If we be honest, a lot of us adults come from dysfunctional backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to make sure that educators understand what the terminology is, what it means, and more importantly, we need to help them understand just because the kid is coming from an impoverished background don't mean he's a thug. A kid sagging his pants, that doesn't mean he's a thug. Mm-hmm. A kid coming in smelling like weed don't mean he smoked weed. Mm-hmm. What if I'm coming from a household where weed is being smoked in the household? It's in my clothes. I don't live in a mansion, so I don't have anywhere to go. Mm-hmm. You understand what I mean? So we got to start digging and asking the right questions and probing and not assuming, because our biases are one of the reasons why so many of our kids are being suspended, expelled, and sent to prison at a young age.
Yeah. Man, this is I'm gonna tell you something. I'm just enjoying the show. I rarely get a chance to do that. Most of the time I'm hosting, but I would say this. I think everybody's exactly right. And I can appreciate the variety of approaches that everybody has, because I think that comprehensively that's what's going to bring about the change. First and foremost, I don't know whether to call you Dr. Jackson or Joe Clark. I mean, you're a rebel, and it takes that. And I say these things and people think I'm crazy, but we need to, culturally speaking, white this whole idea of the American dream completely from our mental hard drive. It is not good for us. I mean, every day I find myself working in the school system with people, with adults who are more caught up on titles and paperwork than they are educating
Right.
people. This is a very serious phenomenon. You fool around and don't call somebody that has a doctor and a doctor, you're going to have some serious problems in these schools.
Right.
Okay, but this is what it's come to. It's very serious, and the children are suffering because of it. You know, so we did this show about school to prison pipeline. And we did it to get, because we know the youth aren't listening to the show. We did it to get the attention of the parents. So I said something very bold. I said, what do you think? Shouldn't we just go ahead now and negotiate the prison sentences, and maybe they'll get lighter sentences? You know, if we just negotiate it and send them straight from school to prison. People were outraged about it. I said, but listen, this is exactly where they're going if we don't do something about this. I'm educated, and it's hard on me. You understand what I'm saying? So every day I'm in battle because people say, well, you know, they're doing college prep and all that. And I talk to kids personally. I say, if you want to go to college to be an educator or be a doctor, an attorney, get your post-secondary, do it. But if you don't want to, don't sign up and be a lamb to the slaughter. You know, buying into an American dream that is not real. You are not going to get out of school and just get a good paying job like that. It's not going to happen. So we need to look at more vocational. And listen, I tell them this, if somebody else is going to pay for your school, do it. But don't go and accrue $80,000 worth of debt and then come out with entitlement issues on top of the fact that now you don't want to work certain places, and then you go get into more debt because you need to have some sort of visual manifestation of the fact that now you're educated formally. We have a very serious problem, and we need to start by correcting the paradigm.
And that's interesting you actually mentioned that. I want to share a quick story with you about one of my students. And if you follow me on Facebook, you may remember me posting it, and it got thousands of hits. And I actually was contacted even by a few celebrities, and it's entitled My Mother's Watch. I actually had one student. He was actually beat up, and he was a blood. He came back the next day to retaliate. Now, I wasn't his principal. His principal was a principal at one of the smaller high schools across campus, but she was a female. And she said, Dr. Jackson, you need to speak. Nothing against female. But she said, Dr. Jackson, this is one that you need to take up. Now, the kid beat up, busted lip. I mean, he's ready to go. So I had my assistant principal with me and the school resource officer in there with me. And we shared our story with this young man. And this young man began to explain to us why he was in his thought process. And he had a watch on. And it was a girl's watch. And I saw it, but I didn't say nothing to him. Well, eventually the guy explained to me that a couple years ago his mom died. My assistant principal knew that. Remember, you got to connect with your kids before you can correct. Yeah. So we already knew he was going through some trauma issues. Well, the Father's Day before that, he actually met with this particular. He actually went to find his daddy in Carrollton, Georgia, and his daddy, who's a pastor, didn't even acknowledge him at all after the service. And he was like, Daddy. And Dad didn't even say nothing to him. So he lost all hope at that particular time. And he came back to retaliate. And his mother's watch was the watch that connected him to me. And he said he grabbed his mother's watch, that particular night before he came to school, and the mother told him to come to school, that he had to come to school the next day. Well, fast forward, this particular student, who was in the juvenile justice system, he was a drug dealer as well. I was like, so what's wrong? He was like, nobody cared about me. I gave him $122. I said, I'm invested in you. He was like, well, I need, what do you, and I know that they can make it. So therefore, when they come to our school smelling like weed, they come in my office and they walk out smelling like Febreze.
Exactly. I mean, and that was a powerful story as I'm sitting here listening to you, because we do have to make decisions every day. And when you're working with this population that we serve, if you choose to follow the protocols and the things that are in place for students, then you are participating in that school to prison pipeline, because there are many instances where you have to have I call it discernment, having a conversation to know the backstory of the students and what they are up against, and how can we correct the issue or the problem, versus saying, okay, because you made this error or because you made this mistake or you we're going to throw our hands up on you as well. But what's so powerful, as I was sitting here listening, and I'm thinking about our students that are involved in sex trafficking, I have to deal with that. Our students that are involved in, in selling drugs and gangs and things of that nature. And every day being able to come and say, when you come to school, this is a safe place. We're going to love you. We're going to support you. We're going to wrap our arms around you. And so guess what? I want to show you that there's a better way or a different way from what you're doing, but not condemn them and not use your biases that they're involved in these certain lifestyles, and therefore you deem to them to be unworthy. And so to every day, I have a wonderful opportunity to go and make a difference in the lives of kids, and I take that job very seriously. But it is taxing. As an administrator, working in these populations when you're not supported because you're unorthodox in your practices, and guess what? My credit card has been used multiple times. Who needs clothes, who needs shoes, whoever. I have to pay to go to work every day. Students that are involved in situations, they're stranded, having to pay for Greyhound buses to get kids that find themselves in situations to get them back to school. Understanding that some of my students have to sleep at the MARTA station at night. Being able to have to go to sleep and know I can sleep in a bed and know that my students sometimes are not able to. It creates a sense of overwhelmingness. But I know that every day, guess what? I go into what I consider to be an ICU, and I have the unique opportunity to see how many students that I can save their lives. And I tell my staff every day that our responsibility, the check that we cash every day, we need to be able to look a parent in the face, just like if they've experienced trauma of a gunshot wound or anything else. We need to be able to look that parent in the face. If that child is going to drop out or have dropped out, we need to say we did everything in our power to save your child. If we don't do that, then we are committing educational neglect and educational malpractice.
Educational malpractice. See, as my student, I just told you, Ryan actually stated, and see, I'm listening to Mr. Jackson as well as Dr. Woodley, and see, as my student told me, you got your dope dealers and you got your hope dealers. And he said, Dr. Jackson, you're a hope dealer. And that's the number one. That's the number one indicator of success within the student. Hope. Yes. And now within schools, that hope can be snatched away with that little red ink pen.
Wow. I'm going
That hope can be snatched away with that little red ink pen.
read a few comments from our viewers. Jamie says, this is absolutely systemic, and we need more change agents within the community who can help address the economic system that sustains this. Great panel. Simone says, this is why I keep saying we as people need to have our own education system for our children. So I do want y'all to touch on that in a moment. Love your ideas about differentiating instruction, Dr. Woodley. I would even call it differentiation of instruction. It doesn't even have a name, what she does. Course creation, everything. Anything that needs to be done is what happens at McLaren. How do we deal with teachers who have 4+ ACEs dealing with our students? They need more support than the kids. So I definitely want to get your thoughts on this. Mr. Jackson, how do we deal with these teachers who unknowingly are contributing to the system that we're talking about, and they mean well, but they just don't know? Other than training on the back end, how else do we address this?
Well, I think it starts with a mindset, and we have to force these teachers to walk on that broken leg. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is that if I go speak somewhere and I'm not making people feel a little bit uncomfortable, then maybe I'm not doing my job. Because many times we get complacent and we get comfortable. And I tell educators all the time, this job is not for the prideful. I started teaching back in 1995. It's not a job of pride. You have to live in your humility to do this job. And you have to be humble at all times. Because these kids have a way of exposing you for who you really are.
Yeah,
and some people are just not made to do this job. And as administrators, and I appreciate Dr. Woodley and Dr. Jackson being on the call for me, but on the show, I think that sometimes, even as administrators, you have to start weeding people out. And everybody's not good for the job. And everybody shouldn't be working with kids. Some people need to be working in a cubicle by themselves. If you're not a people person, you shouldn't be working with kids. And I had a teacher ask me one time, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm not his mom. I said, you don't have to be his mom, but you got to be a mother figure. You got to be a big sister. We have to be a lot of things to our kids that are not in our job description. And many times these kids are with us more than they're with their parents. So we can't continue to focus on what parents are not doing. I do parent workshops. I encourage parents, but I'm more focused on character development. I'm not worried about the young man that's sagging his pants. I'm worried about building his character, because if I teach him how to build his character and how to love himself and why he's not a slave and why he's a king and why he's a scholar and why he's smart, not only will he pull his pants up, but he'll do everything else correctly. So I just believe that we need, I know we talked there a little bit earlier about training, but it also starts with what is Principal Kafele, he says it in his book, The Principle 50. What is your why? Why are you doing this? What makes you an advantage to your kids? And if you don't feel like you're an advantage to your children, then you probably shouldn't be doing this job.
I think it's important, and this is something that I've had to realize after working under Dr. Woodley, because it does take a lot to do the type of work that she does. And teachers need to really be reflective about what population do you best serve. And it is okay if that's not your population, but what's not okay is for you to just remain somewhere, not be effective, and not service the students in the way that they need. So I think teachers should really do a lot of self-reflection and decide, where can I be most effective? And they need to either put themselves in that situation or, like you said, perhaps not even be teaching at all. But I think a lot of teachers just, we go where we can get a job, or, and just kind of get comfortable, like you said.
But even with that, even with the reflection and teachers ensuring that they're in the proper environment, more than anything, teachers need support. And that's where Doctor and I actually come in. We have to put procedures and protocols in place to actually support this teacher. And one of my principal groups that we were on social media last night, we were talking about profanity. And using profanity towards a teacher, should that be an automatic suspension? Was it a major or minor offense? And I was surprised at how many principals actually stated, "Oh no, that's an automatic 3 days." Well, some of our kids, their vocabulary. Yeah, sometimes a teacher let one off every now and then.
They'll take you there.
You have to be understanding of that, but at the same time, you have to be supportive of that particular teacher. And sometimes, not only does the teacher need a break from the child need a break from the teacher.
Yes, exactly.
So instead of suspending the child, there have been times where a child I'm this teacher. I'm certified. That child will be in my office 2 days, or I'll send that child with this particular teacher. And most importantly, more than anything, I involve my teachers in the consequences.
Oh.
Hey, what do you want to do with this? This is what he said. And many times, some of the teachers like, "Doc, you know what? Just keep them with you today." And we'll press the reset button as a forgiving spirit. Now we're getting into some spirituality, because now I'm not holding a grudge on this particular child. Or she say, "Dr. Jackson, I've been very stressed. I need a couple days." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to have to get his assignment ready. He's going to be with this teacher this day, and this teacher this day." And now the child is recharged. The teacher had a chance to rest from this particular student, do some reflection. The child wrote the letter to the teacher. Now he's back in the classroom. We don't have any problems. Right. But if you look in the panel, the student code of conduct, disrespectful to the staff, which is something I don't condone at all, that child is supposed to be suspended for a couple of days. And can you believe, I was telling you all before the show, can you believe I was under investigation for having too few suspensions last year by the Department of Education?
You got to get the folks up out of there.
No, I had one. In December, I had one suspension. And I was livid that I was on a conference with representatives from, "Is this all you have?" And I dropped it and I said, "You know what? How many am I supposed to have?"
The thing is, that's kind of backwards,
Jackson,
because
that's
I
funny
would.
that you said that, because I went and spoke to some educators a couple weeks ago, and I always know if I'm welcome or if I'm not welcome when I walk into a place. I walk into the auditorium, the first 20 rows are empty. These are all educators, right? And they talking about, "Well, we got to suspend kids for this and suspend kids for that." And I start sniffing myself. I said, "Do I think of something? Y'all don't want to cover the first 20 rows? I said, "You 20 rows back?" Now, when your kids sit 20 rows back, what do you say to them? What kind of example are you leading with your children? That's the first thing. And secondly, as these educators, we got to start holding each other accountable. and we suspended kids, some of us, not you guys, not you, Dr. Woodley, not you, Dr. Jackson, but a majority of these teachers and administrators are suspending these kids at an alarming rate because the stat are stating that. And I ask them all the time, well, you suspended a kid for 5 days for skipping school, right? I knew a principal in North Carolina suspended a kid 5 days for skipping school. So I asked her and the rest of her team, I said, how would it affect you if I suspended you for 5 days with no pay? How would that affect your bottom line? And most of them stood up and said, well, I want my money. I said, well, that's how we have to look at our kids. You know, when we suspended them for trivial reasons, 5 days for skipping school, you just gave that young man a bonus.
Yeah. It was 5 days. He was going to skip anyway.
Right. So here's my question. If we know that this school-to-prison pipeline phenomenon exists, what can we do for students and for parents to help them, I don't know, avoid the situation? Don't give them a pen to stick you with. If you know the system is stacked against you, how can we help people to change the mentality so that we don't keep falling into the trap?
Well, just as I started off, we can't do this alone. The school.
No.
I'm sorry. As great of success that I've actually had, we can't do this. It's some hard work. We need the help of the community.
Yeah.
They've been given a hall pass. We need the commitment from the parents. All we need you to do is 3 things. Bring your child to school. 3 things. To listen, always try their best, and never give up. That's all we need. Give us that. My mom raised 8, 6 boys and 2 girls by herself. I'm still trying to figure out how she did that.
Yes.
But you remember your parents used to say, don't let nobody from that school call me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all they need to say. You remember the community when if you was caught throwing rocks
Throwing
down
rocks.
the street?
Yes.
You was taken care of by her, and by the time you got home, that's another one.
They already knew about
We
it.
need
yeah.
that.
Yes.
We need
Remember
we need the community, and most importantly, we need to instill some resiliency, some resolve, and some intestinal fortitude in our kids, especially our boys,
That's right.
because they give up like that.
True.
That hope is actually snatched from them. And parents, there are some things you can do to help at home. Starting off, your son is 6. When he take out the trash, don't come behind him and put the trash bag in for him. Parents, what the camera? There it is, right there.
Yeah.
You're teaching the child not to be able to complete a task.
Teach them to follow through.
Follow through and
Right.
finish.
Absolutely.
Little small things like that. A strong early literacy program. Principals, you can create that in your school. You can create that within your school. And most importantly, we have to connect with our kids. You can't correct if you don't connect.
You know
Right.
what?
Can't
I
teach
feel
what
like
you
the
can't
hard
reach.
The hard part about the connection, though, is the generation gap and the media. You understand? Like, most of their connection comes from social media. So many of them know so much about the world, not necessarily the world but from experience, but from social media.
Exposure.
Right. And so our generation is different from Gloria up the street seeing you do something, and then your mama know by the time you get down the hill. No, it's more like a stay out of my business type thing now. You know what I'm saying? So if I see you doing something, I'm going to say something about it, and I'm going to drive off before you call down the street and 17 of your big brothers and your uncle come out there looking for me. That generation gap and how things have changed so much is kind of hard to use those old school methods. It's like, as times change, so should we. We gotta more or less adapt our methods to the times we have now. Not saying sell ourselves, because, 3 well-dressed brothers in here, I don't see none of y'all in no skinny jeans sagging them just to be relatable. It's a hope.
Hey man, I can't fit no skinny jeans, bro.
So I mean, we do still have to be relatable, even though we're not of their generation. It's just at the same time be relatable, but maintain the message.
And it was no different. It was no different because we had the kid and play box that our parents didn't like that, those skid pants,
Right.
and those chick jeans the girls used to wear.
Yeah.
The mom didn't like them, but they adapted to that and they kept their morals and their values. Think about it.
That's what I'm saying.
This is the
Yeah.
only generation that's biblically illiterate.
True.
That's deep. We're so disconnected from them in so many areas, in so many areas, and we didn't cause this, just the school. It's going to take a community effort to turn this thing around.
But what happened, though? So many people left the community.
Oh, see, that's a different show.
Because like you said, the community was so tight at that point, everybody knew everybody. But with so many people transplanting here from other places, so many people leaving here, going to other places, it's like we have so many different cultures that are now in one.
But we have to respect each other's culture too.
Oh
and
no,
I think
not
one of the
definitely
things that
respect
we
each
have
other's
to do,
culture.
especially as adults.
But
And
they're
I have a
different.
son who's 19, who's in college, and one of the things that irritate me more than anything, I like having a conversation with somebody, but my son, he likes to text. So I had to learn how to communicate with him in a way that was comfortable for him, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And, because my son, that's how, and not just my son, that's how these young people communicate. They communicate via text, they communicate in other ways. And I know there are some stipulations in place with education that we can't communicate with them in those ways, but we have to start having those hard conversations with our kids. Your color is not going to define your future, your choices do. You show me your friends, I show you your future. So the same way we have these hard conversations with adults, we have to make sure that we're preparing our kids, even the kids who are coming from dysfunction like I did and like most of us did. There's no excuse. We have to start preparing them for the future.
Yeah, what's powerful that I hear both of you gentlemen say is about relationships and the whole
Right.
piece of
Gotta build.
relationships, regardless of basically the generational gap. Kids want to know that you care. They want to know that you care. They want to know that you don't judge them. They want to know that you are real. And they want to be able to feel that, guess what, you understand or you can relate to what they're going through. Okay. And
Right.
so I think that's the whole, the piece that I got from the whole working with our students that are at Promise. One of the things which I do, which is difficult in a comprehensive high school. I have the unique pleasure of doing things a little different because I don't have as many students. But I meet with every child that walks through my door, and I get to know who they are, their situation, where they live, who they live with, what their backstory is. I'm able to have that conversation. I'm also able to have a conversation about, okay, guess what? Whatever you've experienced, whatever you've gone through, guess what? It doesn't matter. I love you, and I'm going to support you. I'm going to do everything I can. But I'm asking you that I'm going to give you 100% of me. I need you to give me 100% of you. And I need for you to be able to let me know when there's barriers and things in place that you can't give me 100% of you. Because if I don't know, I can't support you. And yes, there are rules in place that talking to students on cell phones and things of that nature, but every student that walks through my door has my cell phone number. Call me, text me, let me know what's going on. I had a student that got shot. Guess what? On the way to the hospital, guess what he did? Text, Dr. Woodley, I'm headed to the hospital. I got shot. That's why I'm at school today. So that's what you call turnaround, transformation.
Right.
Because guess what? He want to make sure that his principal knows what's going on, because he knows if he's missing for 2 days, guess what? We're coming to the house to find him, to figure out why you're not at school.
Absolutely.
Because we have that level of love and care for the students that we serve. Another comment
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have to be transparent with our kids as well. I think many of us adults need to step out of our comfort zone and stop acting like we've been perfect and we had it all together our whole life, and start sharing our experiences with our kids and let them know that we bumped our head, we made some bad decisions, but this is how we got it right.
But
we have to teach our kids how to change the narrative.
And it's important to share your story. You're absolutely right, because my kids thought I actually grew up because of the suits that I actually wear to work. They thought I actually grew up in a perfect family background.
I got that a lot.
I just got
You
this
gotta share
suit.
your story.
Same here.
Well,
Same
I
here.
mean, here's my only hang up with that is that I think they catch the wrong parts of that story more often than not, because, okay, you could tell them, I used to hustle, this, that, and the third, but now I'm a teacher. Teachers don't make no money, but hustlers do. I see more hustlers in my neighborhood than teachers, and my teacher used to hustle. He didn't go to jail. He didn't die. I'm finna go hustle.
That's interesting you said that, because I had a student in my office with the same situation, and guess what I did? I actually got on my phone and I called two hustlers, two former hustlers,
Legit.
back in Lake Charles, Louisiana, from the hood. Both of them in the music industry now.
Okay.
One of them had just lost their son
To the streets?
to the streets.
Okay.
And it was perfect timing. I was like, hey, I got one in my office. I need you to chat with him right quick. Share your story with him and give him a little bit of the real. Because he was consumed with me in the suit, and I'm a principal and I'm supposed to talk to him like that. And then I hung up and I said, hold on, let me call Anthony, who has connection with UGK down in Southwest Louisiana.
Okay.
And I asked him, have you ever heard of that group? Yeah. I was like, hold on, let him talk to you for a minute. And both of those guys gave him their cell phone. And they told him, don't ever miss another day of school. So you have to be able to connect. And there's nothing greater than actually knowing what your kids are actually growing through. So when you share, growing through, so when you share your stories with them, and that's why it's important for those teachers that are actually placed in those communities to have some type of understanding of actually what you're getting yourself into.
Yes.
Having them been through that community.
Some of that stuff can be taught during the undergrad piece, where they actually go in some schools and actually go into some communities and things of that nature.
Okay. Yeah.
The
I mean,
other
and I
piece
definitely.
sorry.
Oh, sorry about that.
The other piece I want to talk about was about teachers, and you Dr. Jackson, you brought up supporting teachers and being that support for teachers. Burnout is real.
Yes, it is.
Burnout is real, and so they're
Right.
expected to provide all this support as well as the pressure of increased test scores and things of that nature. And so burnout is real. And so one of the things that I am so a big proponent of is being transparent. Okay, I don't believe in how some administrators operate in fear, where you don't want them to come in your classrooms, and you're afraid they're out to get you and things of that nature.
I mean, it make you nerve wracking when they sitting there with that clipboard and not saying nothing. Be trying to act transparent. They like, you ain't invisible. I see you with that clipboard. I keep hearing this on the table. They scratch it real hard with the pen.
Exactly. But knowing that, going into those classrooms, knowing that I'm there to support you, and we're gonna have a critical conversation if you're not doing what you need to do. But I'm gonna love you out the door. You know what I'm saying? If you're not doing what you need to do. But I'm also there. If you're having a bad day, don't come to school and stress my students out, because guess what? They've already dealt with so much before they even got to the schoolhouse. So why would I allow a teacher that's not really going to be their best to be able to come to school? So you don't have to call me and lie to me and tell me you're sick or whatever. You just say, hey, Dr. Woodley, I need a mental health day. I'm having I need to reset. And we do that. And I celebrate them like crazy. I require a lot because, our students deserve it. But I also let them know how much I love and appreciate them for the work that they do, because I can't be successful if they're not successful on a daily basis.
And she really, really does. Y'all, it was so hard for me to leave McLaren, because Dr. Willie is that type of principal, and she does get it, and most principals are not. I've worked for principals who were like, I know the HR handbook right and left, up and down, from page 1 to page 150. And if you get out of line, that was it. Like, you could barely use your sick days without them hounding you. So you're right. The burnout gets real. Teachers are frightened when they see the administrator walk in.
And it's okay for them to make a mistake.
Yes.
But most administrators don't tell you that. And they don't make it okay for you.
It's one of those type places, like I said, when they sit there with that clipboard, you wondering, like, am I finna get clipped? And then they write really hard on the clipboard, too. And it's just like, oh, she wrote fire really hard.
If you're an effective principal, and you've been in there, my teachers get excited when I come. My students get excited when we come in there.
You must don't have a clipboard.
Oh, see, the key to that, and as key you mentioned that, I don't have to have that all the time. So when I do come in there to actually do the real deal for me, there's no problem at all, because I've been in there so many times. We've actually connected, and the kids that come to me at lunch and say, how did we do, Dr. Jackson? We did a great job today, didn't we?
And you know what?
You have to create that environment.
It's interesting that you two say that, because more often than not, the disconnect happens in between the teachers and administration. It's like administration will have you walking around like, man, it's the day my day. I don't know. And I really feel like administration, to be effective, you almost have to be like you're like a manager somewhere, because you are a manager. You're the supervisor. You're kind of the boss of the building for the moment. You kind of got to be a manager. You got to keep morale up, even if it means like, look, okay, I ain't supposed to say this on clock, but 8 o'clock we meeting at the bar. Y'all can come through or not. I'll be there. And at that point, I'm no longer Dr. fill in the blank. I'm Joe.
Okay.
And we kicking it.
Well,
And then the thing is, that can not necessarily say everybody got to get drunk together, but that can breed a level of camaraderie. It's a running joke I have about, we boys because we split a fifth together.
Yeah.
If we split a fifth together, we cool for a little while.
Well,
You were
I
there.
do. It's interesting that you say that because I do believe. Now, I'm not gonna go to the bar with my staff.
Okay.
Okay.
That was
I
just an
feel.
example.
I know, but I'm saying I feel that there has to be a level of separation. I do feel that you must create opportunities for team building activities, things outside
Dave
of
and
work
Buster's.
to kind of love on each other and be a part of each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I also tell my staff is guess what? I know that guess what? First of all, we're never going to be at a position where we're going to be able to, that you're going to totally feel comfortable around me, outside of the work environment. So I encourage them. I have a person that's in place that is to really focus on teacher burnout and staff morale to create activities where they create activities, they go out, they have a good time. So they have a bowling night, things of that nature. So what I'll do is I'll come in the beginning, I'll love on them. I'm there for a short period of time, so then they can really let their hair hang out. I hang down and really enjoy, communicating with each other and things of that nature.
So it's
but
one of
I
those type
know
things where, like, the
that they're
boss
not
gone.
gonna be
Yes.
exactly. They're not gonna be comfortable to really be able to do that. With me there, and I feel like if you do put yourself in a position where you two on the other side, then they're not going to respect you as their
agree.
leader. So I think there has to be some boundaries there, but I also believe that you've got to put things in place to support your staff's mental health. And it was one of the callers or one of the people wrote in to say, what about the teachers for ACEs? The teachers that have those trauma they've experienced growing up, and they really haven't resolved their issues. Because the students will tell you, oh, that person, the teacher didn't take that medicine today, or they bipolar, Dr. Woodley, or what have you. They'll have a conversation. I never forget, we were, years ago, I was working at a school, and the principal asked the students on a field trip, said that he had to remove about 5 teachers from the staff, and who should they removed. And the students say, okay, this one does this, that, the other. So the students were able to kind of say, hey, I can
Students
let you
firing
know.
teachers now?
Exactly. But they're able to tell you what the issues are that's going on, and as they say, who are the real teachers in the building and who are the fake teachers in the building. They're able to have that conversation. And so being able to be true and be transparent and be able to support the teachers as well, to say, okay, hey, that, this teacher's experiencing illness. For instance, this teacher, I had a teacher last year that was dealing with cancer. You know what I'm saying? That was, dealing with cancer, but guess what? She needed to work. She needed to keep her job in order for her to keep her medical insurance and be able to, do what she needed to do. But really and truly, was she truly going to be able to be effective in the classroom, really working with the kids when she's dealing with chemotherapy and things of that nature? And so that's a conversation that we had to have about how do we go about changing her schedule, what types of things we will have her work on during this process of being able to support that teacher, through that transition. Because guess what? Prior to her getting cancer, she was a teacher of the year, was a stellar performing teacher and things of that nature. But teachers have real issues and real problems too. And if we don't address the teacher burnout and teacher issue, I think that perpetuates itself and adds to the school to prison pipeline as well, because the students are not getting effective teachers in the classroom.
Absolutely. So I want to ask for some final thoughts. My last question to you all is, for those people who say the school to prison pipeline does not exist, it's a made up phenomenon, it's an excuse, it's just something else that another reason that we're throwing out there as to why people aren't making the effort to achieve. And I want each one of you to speak to that. Does it exist?
We're going in order.
Absolutely. First off, thank you for having me on this panel. This is a phenomenal show. I mean, I'm serious. I'm over here trying to stop from tearing up. It's just so much information disseminating in the air. It's absolutely real. And I think that when you do the research, you'll find that the state, especially in the state of Georgia, they have to subsidize private prisons if they don't stay at, I believe it's 80% capacity. Okay, and so with that being said, the state is not in the business of giving money to private prisons. They're in the business of ensuring that they have the bodies to go in there. So this is absolutely a real phenomenon. The 13th Amendment legalized slavery. It didn't necessarily outlaw it, except for by which a party has been duly convicted of a crime. So, I mean, this is a very, very real phenomenon. But I was just going to say this lastly and make this suggestion. What if all of us on this same of this mindset was to lock arms and come together and use, I know this is going to sound dichotomous, but this perfect storm under this Trump administration, and use this as an excuse to promote cohesion. For some reason, it seems like culturally we don't begin to move until we're commonly oppressed. And so why don't we just use this boogeyman as our excuse? Man, we got to come together. I'm just saying, because we got some great ideas, and I really think that that once we begin to continue to plant these seeds and continue to do what you're doing and what we're doing here, people are now beginning to wake up a little bit more. So that's me. I enjoy this. This has been phenomenal.
Thank you, Laris.
It's very real, because before it was school to prison, it was school to factory. You know what I'm saying? And we're talking about mid 1700s into the 1800s. After slavery, they still needed a labor force. Mm-hmm. Prison became the labor forces until we got into peonage, which was, as much as we love that movie and we laugh our hearts out, the movie Life, that was real. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't so funny once you do the historical reference to it. So they had to get those roads built. They had to get them paved. So many private companies now are buying into it to where your Nikes, your clothes are being stitched, even down to Victoria's Secret. Absolutely. It's being stitched in prisons. Yeah, so some murderer made your drawers.
You just deflated my heart.
That happened. But and so to keep this labor force going, the school was there to do that anyway, except now instead of being a factory, it's a prison factory or a prison sweatshop to where it's happening. So yes, they still have to keep it filled. Are there good schools? Absolutely. Are there good teachers? Great teachers? Absolutely. But on the system as a whole, they are pushing you toward prison, particularly in those inner city, urban areas, majority minority areas, black, brown type things.
30314 right here.
Black, brown, and poor white people type situations.
So I have a question. So you're telling me that people are sitting in boardrooms and they are literally saying, they're giving out numbers. You're telling me people are intentionally making this happen?
Absolutely. Because they can't ride up on horses and snatch you up in night no more and throw you in a field somewhere. No. It has to be a lot more strategic now on their end.
Right, and they do that based off of the test scores. A lady from the Department of Defense, who's a professor, broke it down to me. Around third grade, when we start talking about literacy, they look at the test scores, and then from there they determine how many prisons to build based off of that.
I was waiting for some statistics, so I just tried to dig for that, y'all.
Okay.
6.5. That number has to go to something.
6.5.
Is the school to prison pipeline real? Yes, we know that it's real. We know that comprehensively we're not able to meet the needs of all students. We have to really look at our one-size-fits-all model and begin to kind of figure out what's going to be in the best interest of students in order for us to try to eradicate this issue of school to prison. And that's students at the center. A lot of times as adults, we're constantly having conversations, but we're not having conversations with the people that really and truly really are at the center, and that's the students. What are the students saying? Student voice about what they need in order for them to be successful. Mm-hmm. I think that is going to be the key for us being able to create this movement toward really making a difference. I had the wonderful opportunity this year to take some students to the Congressional Black Caucus. Yes. And they had an opportunity to be around and meet with the top legislators in this country, civil rights leaders, and they had some conversations that will blow you away, to be able to kind of have conversations about where they are, what they've been through and the experiences that they've had and how they were able to change, because they knew based on the path that they were on, they were headed straight to prison. And being able to be grateful at how that role switched as a result of them being placed in a situation where we were able to remove barriers and assist them in them becoming successful. And I think that is the key, being able to have those critical conversations. What is needed for you to be successful? And let's build schools and programs to fit the needs of kids versus fitting the needs of adults.
And when I'm actually asked that question, does the school to prison pipeline exist? I won't give you an emphatic yes. But I actually have been in the system, and I know there are things within the system that can cause a child to go that particular way. Specifically, as I spoke with you about literacy, where 70% of the prisoners are actually reading on the 4th grade reading level. I mentioned that piece. But once again, we can't give out hall passes. There's a parent to prison pipeline as well.
Oh.
There's a home to prison pipeline as well. There's a community to prison pipeline as well. There's a juvenile justice system to prison pipeline as well. I just gave you an example with Ryan.
Yes.
Okay, I'm 16. Well, I'm almost using profanity on here, but because I'm so serious about it.
Yes.
This kid who's struggling, I know his story. Where is he gonna get $88 a month? And if he missed a payment,
Then he's going to jail.
he's going where?
Jail.
To jail. Now, the example I gave you with Ryan, it was something that I did at the school to intervene. And God strategically placed me in his life at that school at that particular time to get him off that course. And we as educators, we do that every single day.
Yeah.
But it can't all be on us. It can't be all on the teacher. But as principals and teachers, we have an opportunity to go into the schools and create an environment that's conducive to learning, that's positive, that's going to lift our students up to a higher level and actually get them on the road to graduation and college and career choices.
Problem is we can't go into the home.
I'm sorry?
We can't go into the home.
But you know what? I can't go into the home. But you know what? When you come into that school, baby, that's mine. I am the president.
Yes.
I run this show. I don't care what. I am the CEO of this particular school. The superintendent can initiate and put a policy in place. But if I feel it's not great for my students and my population, I may not totally go against that. And I told you I broke some of the rules before, and that's how I was able to move our schools from here to here. But there are some things we can definitely do, and some of the things that are actually within the systems, as far as teachers and administrators, and we can definitely tweak. But most importantly, there's a decision to prison pipeline as well.
Oh.
And so why are you making
See, I
that
gave you,
Yes.
and Ryan made that decision. You know what? I got some people who got my back.
And I can work with
Here's the gun. Get rid of it for me. I want to go to the Air Force. I'm sorry. He's in Air Force. I want to go to the Air Force, and I'm going to still be a mechanic. So those are some of the examples. And teachers got millions of stories. Principals got millions of stories like that. And we can continue to connect with our students and give them that hope that was taken from them in school with that red pen. Where out of 100 points, you mark a negative 98 instead of a +2.
Yeah.
Little small
Yeah.
things like that are done systemically. But yes, we can't totally. And I know the school. This is about the school to prison pipeline. I get it. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention if I didn't mention everything else.
Yeah.
Because school, we are expected to fix the world. We inherit every problem of this world, and we're expected to be psychologists, counselors, teachers, pastors, everything.
But it didn't.
Everything.
Yes.
Everything. But we need help. We can't do it alone. Mr. Jackson,
Mr.
I
Jackson.
got the preaching up in here, man.
Well, I agree with my distinguished panelists that the school to pipeline exists, microaggressions exist, invisibilization is real, colorism is real, all these things exist, marginalization is real. When you're looking at statistics by Columbia University, shows that 48% of preschool children suspended more than once are black. school to prison pipeline is real.
Suspend preschool?
There are some other studies out there by Villanova showing that if a white kid is suspended, he's mostly suspended for a provable offense, like smoking, vandalism, or obscene language. Most black kids are suspended for disrespect. What is your definition of disrespect? I think that we need to take a hard look at this school to prison pipeline. I think educators should take a hard look at themselves. And like my guest panelist just said, we are expected to do everything. But I'm gonna tell you like this, brother. With much is given, much is required. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And God has instilled some things in me that told me what He want me to do. And nobody told me the NFL stood for not for long, but when I got cut by the Minnesota Vikings, I knew that wasn't my plan. It wasn't God's plan for me. So this is more like a ministry to me. So sometimes I play counselor. Sometimes I'm going to play father. Sometimes I'm going to play retail. I'm going to have to go and buy some things.
Yeah,
that's what I signed up for.
Absolutely.
And I'm always testing the heart of educators and asking them, why do you do this? Because sometimes you have to ask yourself why you do this, but like you mentioned earlier, we have to recharge our batteries. When I come home, I cut it off. I'm here with my wife. I'm here with my children. I'm being engaged at home. When I'm at work, I'm at work. You know what I mean? And we have to be able to take breaks so we can come back recharged in order to do our jobs more effectively. So the last thing I want to say is we have to set high expectations for our kids, but we must expect them to do well no matter what color they are.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And Robert, you actually just mentioned something which is great, and I know you're probably about to close, but you're right. This is an assignment. You are on assignment. And you need to ensure that your assignment and your alignment are actually together.
That's right. I don't have jobs. I have assignments.
Yeah.
And when that assignment's up, I move on to the next assignment.
Yes. Powerful.
Yeah, I don't
That's
even
real.
really have any. Do you have something to say, Laris?
I mean, the show speaks for itself. I mean, this is, like I said, just like you, I've just been enjoying it. I have immersed myself spiritually in it. So, wonderful show. Thank you, guys. I mean, my life is a whole lot better because of this show now. I'm a lot more enriched, a lot more motivated to go into the classrooms tomorrow myself. So,
Yeah.
And don't give up on our kids. Please don't. Don't give up on our kids.
Right.
They're expecting us, and they can't wait to make us proud. I don't care what social and economic background you're actually coming from. Don't give up on them. Don't
That's right.
give up on them. They are.
Dr. Blades, you got to let us know when part 2 is going to be. It sounds like part 1 was great. We need to have a part 2. Same
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah, because it's almost 6:30, and we are just rolling. So thankfully there wasn't a show immediately after mine. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join me to have this extremely important Candid Conversation. Mr. Jackson, I really appreciate you. I know your schedule is always jam-packed, so thank you for taking out the time to join us. Dr. Jackson, you as well. Dr. Woodley on the front lines. We gonna talk, DJ Agony. Laris, thank you for coming in. Y'all having my back.
absolutely.
Bless you.
Let everyone know how they can connect with you. I feel like y'all's consulting is about to just be off the chain after this show. So let everybody know how they can connect with you. Dr. Woodley.
Okay. Well, I am on every social media outlet as Lateshia Woodley. You can definitely connect with me through those means. My contact information, once you connect with me on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of those things, you'll be more than happy. I'll be more than happy to reach out and support any way that I can. I love what I do. Every day I wake up, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of students. And so I would love to support the work of any educator that is looking to transform their schools.
Yes, and I can actually be reached, just as Dr. Woodley stated, social media, Facebook at Marcus Jackson, Twitter at Dr. Marcus Jackson, and my email is drmarcjack@yahoo.com. I'll be free and open for dialogue and discussion, and thanks for having me on the show, Dr.
Thank you
Blades.
for being here.
I can be reached at www.robertjacksonmotivates.com. Email is robert@robertjacksonmotivates.com. I'm also on Instagram, Rob J Motivates. I'm on Twitter. RJ Motivates. I'm on Facebook. Robert Jackson Motivates fan page. I think you can get me on MySpace too if you like. But no, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and we have to continue to do this work. I would love to continue the conversation, so feel free to reach out to me. Dr. Blades, thanks again. Bless you for having the show, and thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. You can reach me at Facebook, Laris, Laris, space Hodges, Hodges, or Gmail, Laris, Hodges @gmail.com.
All right, and you catch me Thursdays 10 to 12 right here at Instinct, the DTTO show, 2-time nominated DJ Agony. Instagram LordInfinite _DJ Agony. That's LORDINFINITE _DJ AGONY. And Thursday nights I'll be right here. Yeah.
All right, everybody. And I am on Facebook, Marquita Smith Blades, or you can follow the Dr. Marquita Blades Show fan page. Again, I want to thank all of my panelists for taking the time out to start this dialogue, and I hope that we all can get together and continue this again in the future. To everyone who's watching and listening at home, thank you for joining us for this Candid Conversation, and we will see you next time.
The biggest station in the world, playing all of today's hits. You're listening to Instinct Radio.